Good evening. Welcome to Dare to Share with Misty Lane. I'm your host, Misty Lane, best-selling author of the book What Goes Up, award-winning speaker, and also the founder of the hashtag Be That One movement. First things first, I would like to welcome you into the show tonight and ask that you go ahead and share this out with your family and friends. You never know who might need to hear something that's said tonight that could just lift them up, or they may have a friend that has some similar issues that they could pass it on to. So just hit that share button. It's easy. It's free. It only takes a couple of seconds. And then we can go ahead and get this rolling out. We have an amazing guest tonight. He's actually someone I know personally. I coached with him for about a year. He is just so much wisdom beyond wisdom, beyond wisdom. But before we get to him, there's got a few more things we need to talk about here. I want you to go ahead and share it out like I asked you to, and then also invite people to join the hashtag Be That One movement. This movement is where we encourage each other to step up and share our raw truth so that we can just share our life stories with each other and learn from each other. We can become educated. We can gain awareness over all different types of all different types of issues that are going on in real life as real life happens. And once we become educated, once we are aware, maybe the world will be better and we can judge less and mentor more. So this show, Dare to Share, is the platform for people to be able to step up and actually be that one. This is where they can share their story. This is where they can learn to be transparent. Transparency is freedom. I'm telling you guys, transparency is what changed my life. Not just being transparent with the truth to others, but actually, more importantly, with being true to myself. Just being true to Misty, looking in that mirror and being honest with myself about what the real down and dirty really is, and then figuring out what I needed to do to work on it. That's where our guest tonight's going to be so beneficial. He really helps you get through those limiting beliefs. He really helps you shift your mindset. He's an amazing, powerful, powerful speaker. I've seen him speak several times, and I've coached with them. He's a business strategist, and he's known all over the world. He's just very, very well known, very well respected as well. All right, you guys. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and welcome in our guest, Mr. Christopher Salem. Hey, Chris, how are you?
Misty, how you doing?
I'm great. Chris is in the dark, you guys. He's at his son's basketball practice, and it started raining.
Basketball practice, yeah.
He said, well, it's not. It's a nice night. It's not raining. I'll stand outside on the light. And he said, can you believe it's raining? So he's in his car. So that's okay. You're here, and that's all that matters. Yes. It's your wisdom. We don't need to see you. We just want to really hear what you got to say tonight. So
yes. Oops.
Well, Chris, yes. I want to say a little bit more about you. You're a powerful influencer. You have a radio show, Sustainable Success on Voice America Influencers Radio. I know that you have Prosperpreneur, which is a Facebook page as well, with daily wisdom, tons and tons of it. I love all your memes and all your sayings. And when I was coaching with Chris, we used to laugh because he's got such a regimented, what's the word I'm looking for? He's very, I just went blank. He's just Focus. Real rigid. Yeah, he's real rigid in his routine. And I am just totally not. So I would be going to bed around 3 or 4 in the morning, or 2 or 3 or 4, whatever it was. And there's a 2-hour time difference. So he would be waking up early in the morning and I'd be going to bed. It was like almost every day that was our routine. He's like, are you still awake? I'm like, you're getting up already? What? That was funny. All right, Chris, welcome to the show. Welcome to Dare to Share.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Billy McElroy is here with us this evening. Farhana Manzoor, I forget where she's from. Some India, maybe, I'm not sure. Hi, Linda. Thank you for being here. Hey, Sam. Thank you. Anyone that wants to comment or ask Chris questions, he's the guy. I'm telling you, you have a business question, he's the guy. As we start developing the conversation, you'll see he's got tons and tons of knowledge. All right, Chris, we always start the show out by letting you have 2 or 3 minutes just to kind of tell the audience your most proud moments in life, your biggest accomplishments, because we know that everything's not always, cupcakes, unicorns, and rainbows for everyone. There's usually some, some ebbs and tides that come into play here. So we're going to talk about the good stuff first, and then we'll kind of go back and figure out what it took to get up to that point.
Sure. I would say that some of the most, besides, being successful in business and becoming financially free at the age of 35, that the two most important things that have happened in my life was the birth of my son, CJ, where I'm just such a proud father, so involved in everything that he does. And that was the greatest moment of my life. And I would say that equally the same when I married my wife, Maria, and
Wow.
just the most wonderful partner that you can ever imagine. And we are just two peas in a pod, and we just complement each other in such an interdependent way that we understand each other's roles and our duties in our relationship, and we come together with just ease. We communicate really well, and so those are the two things that really stand out for me amongst other personal things that I've done since I made a shift in my life back 21 plus years ago.
Awesome. Let me go back a minute. Let me just ask you. You said at age 35 you discover financial freedom. Can you
Yeah.
explain what does financial freedom mean?
Well, what that means is that I was I was a six-figure earner for several years working in sales at the time. I invested in a startup company when I was 24 years old. So I got into investing in companies even at an early age. And that company was like a roller coaster ride for a good 10, a little over 10 years, where, it was going up, it would go down. It looked like it was going to go out of business, and then it would come back up again. Eventually, that company ended up filing for an IPO and went public. So I became very, very rich as a result of that, having owned a considerable amount of stock that when it was now went public, I was able to sell the stock and make a lot of money. Now, since then, I've invested in other companies, real estate, you name it, private lending, and done extremely well. But I've had my share of losses there as well. That's the nature of the game when it comes
Right.
to being an investor and involved in certain types of risks when it comes to leveraging money and making money.
Right. And I know that your main focus, Chris, is around business. You're a business strategist. You are a big influencer. You speak to a lot of corporations. I'm seeing constantly you're always on some kind of poster, like a poster child for business speakers. You're always on some kind of summit. You're always here or there or wherever, because you're a very, you're sought after as a speaker in the business world. But this show is a little bit different. This is the Dare to Share show. We talk more about adversity. This show is about inspiring others with your story so that people can see that they can overcome their worst to live their best. And you are successful. And like you said, you went up and down, you held in there, you were resilient, you got to where you are. But your life wasn't always like that. So that's what we're going to focus on the first half of the show. We're going to kind of go back, and a lot of people that know you probably don't know these things about you, but I know you because I've coached with you, and you've always been 100% transparent with me. The little talks we've had sitting in the lobby or wherever we were, you've always put yourself out there to help me understand why putting myself out there is so important. So that's why I'm so excited to have you here for that reason too. So let's take off that business jacket for just a minute. And we're going to step back, and we're going to talk about I guess we're going to start with like what some people call daddy issues, because, there's so many daddy issues in the world. Some be not having a daddy present. Some have abusive fathers. Some have fathers that are there that just don't pay attention to them. But there's always some kind of issue. And let's start there in your story and talk about your relationship with your dad.
Well, I mean, growing up, my father, just to give a little background story, so this way it kind of paints the picture of what we're going to talk about. My dad had grown up relatively poor, and, my grandfather didn't make much money. And so, my dad was kind of like the black sheep of the family and had to kind of basically fend for his own. So my dad was working odd jobs even at the age of 12. And I think on some level resented my grandfather for not being, more, in terms of doing more that he could for the family. And as a result, my dad had made a pact with himself that he was never going to be poor going forward. He was going to do whatever it took to become successful. Now, with that being said, there are sacrifices. And when my dad got married and had me and then my brother, it was we didn't see much of him growing up. He was, traveling. He was busy doing things. But when he was around, he was, emotionally checked out. Really didn't seem to have interest in what we were doing. Now, granted, I'm going to explain all this in hindsight later.
Mhm.
But as a child, you just kind of look at it as like maybe, he just doesn't have interest in what you're doing. So growing up, I didn't have that direction. I didn't have that person that, a boy counts on. In this case, his father. Now, my mother was, great mother and so on. But a boy needs a dad. He needs a male role model, and I
Yeah.
didn't have that growing up. I mean, it was even far worse for my brother. So
Mhm.
as a result of that, when I grew up, I didn't realize that all of this was really having an impact on me. But as I got older and, reached puberty around that age of, 12, 13, whenever that happens, I began to just become more angry. And that anger just grew and grew and grew to the point it began to affect just every aspect of my being. It affected my level of self-esteem, my confidence. It impacted my communication with other people, my relationships, making decisions. And while I projected myself to be, this, you know, got it all together type of guy, I was very arrogant, very egotistical. And meanwhile, I was just, I had virtually no self esteem or self confidence
Right.
whatsoever. I was wearing a mask
All the
every
time.
day
Yeah.
of my life. And it was not like a regular mask that, we're wearing now with COVID. Consider it like I was wearing an ironclad
Right.
mask,
Yeah.
carrying this burden and weight of worthlessness around my, every day. And then I just took it out on other people. Like I just, I got into inappropriate behaviors. I got into drugs, alcohol. I got into, certain things that, weren't I'm not proud of.
Right.
And, and the only good, if I could look at it now, some people would say it's the only, I never got caught. My brother was the one who got caught and I didn't. That's why I guess they used to call me the Phantom back when I was young, because I could do these things that normally maybe you would go to jail, and yet I got away with it. So
I
I
would
don't know if that's a
consider
good
that.
thing or a bad thing, but who knows?
I,
But
you know,
nonetheless, yeah,
I think it's a bad thing. I went through the same thing. I used to get away with so much stuff, and a lot of that had to do with my appearance. When I would be out on the streets, running stolen credit cards for my crack cocaine addiction, I didn't look like your typical stereotypical, crackhead on the street.
yeah,
Because I'm a Texas beauty queen, even smoking crack, I gotta have my chapstick and my lipstick on. So, but all that did for me was it allowed me to dig a deeper hole, like in the judicial system. I just was digging a deeper and deeper hole. But let's go back, Chris. When you said you realized around puberty is when you started seeing the anger come out, like what was it that made you realize that you were missing that affection? Did you have close friends that had really good relationships with their dad? They would go off hunting together and you just never got to do that. And I ask these questions because I have a son that never had his dad growing up. And the man that I married, his stepdad, they weren't just real. They had one common interest in music, but they never did a bunch of other stuff together. And he
yeah.
really missed that. And I think he's got some similar anger issues. So that's why I'm asking. And there's probably plenty of people listening that can relate to this as well. So, how did you know that you had an abnormal relationship, and why did that make you like? How did you see that anger start coming up?
I just knew, like, playing little league baseball and then Babe Ruth, and then you got involved in sports, and and some of my, my friends would be, the people I was playing with, and their dads would be either coaching or they would be in the stands, and my dad wasn't there.
Never there.
And, my mother would be there, but, it just, even though that was a great thing, don't get me wrong, it was just as a boy, knowing that, this male figure, this role model that you look up to wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, I didn't realize the impact that it had on me, but on some level, again, I just started to feel empty. I just felt like I had no direction. I didn't feel I was worthy enough. And I felt like I always had to prove myself even more. And it was at that time, as I began to get older, like, with going as a teenager, I felt like, because I had to prove myself, I needed this validation for others to show my worth, to acknowledge my efforts.
Mm-hmm.
And I was seeking this out in other people, other coaches, like, or I sought it out in older male role models. But see, in this case, Misty, is that the choices I made with those older role models, they also let me down.
Oh.
And now, granted, I can look back; they didn't let me down. That's just how I looked at it. But at the time, that's my perception. They let me down, and as a result of that, that just fueled my anger so
Even.
much that
Mm-hmm.
it began to consume me, to the point where I didn't know what to do with it. I acted out. I got into fights. I got into, I would break into people's homes to unleash my wrath. I'm ashamed of a lot of the things I did growing up. And as a result, I just didn't know what to do with it. And that's where, obviously, when I found drugs and alcohol, it was like the only thing that I could go to escape. It was my only way to escape temporarily, only to, get when I got, when I got out of the high or that
Right.
drunkenness, the pain and the anger would just still be there waiting for me.
Well, I want to go back again to something you said earlier about how, like playing baseball, you realize your dad wouldn't be there. I know there's a lot of situations. I know people close to me that I've talked to about this that try to tell me all the time, Misty, you work too much. And you, as a coach, have also tried to teach me about balance in my life, because I do work like my nuclear medicine job a ton of hours. Then I try to put what's left over into this, and there's not much time left over for me or anyone else. So that's constantly been a juggle. But there are parents, Christopher, that are out there that they may not show up to all their kids' events because they're working two jobs to keep a roof over their
Yeah.
head. And then I've talked to those people that grew up resentful, and they've said, well, my parents were never there, and they don't even realize why they aren't, because there's two ways. Some just aren't there because they're assholes, right? And some just aren't there because they can't be. So I think you are a great example because you find that perfect balance. And I watch you. I know you're at CJ's games. You make, even when you were coaching me, you were very, very specific about it had to be around CJ's, he came first and it was a priority, and that's the way it should be. So speak a little bit on that if you would.
Well, yeah. I mean, today, and I'll be happy to talk about, where I made the pivot, back, 22 years ago now, 23 years ago now.
We'll get to
And,
that later.
yeah. But again, today I do everything opposite of what happened to me. I'm very busy. If I've been at 100% of my son's games, no. If I missed a few, of course, because we got things. But I've always been at majority of everything. I coached my son's teams. That was a role that to me was going to be the most important role that I would ever have in my life. And
Being a
that
dad.
was to be a dad, and knowing that you only get one shot at it. And I had, and was there a manual that came with it? No. I mean, I'm the CEO of Empowered Fathers in Action, and this is what we teach other dads how to do with their children. But still, even though we have a methodology and a process to help dads, there's still no, proven system of, that's going to be guaranteed. And with that being said, I can only be my best, not the best. I'm not looking to be perfect, Dad. I'm not looking to be the best. I'm here to just show up to be my best each and every day, learning from any mistakes I made, to do whatever I can to be there for my son in an
Mhm.
interdependent way. Because I always do things with him, sharing from, or being the example. I'm there to inspire him to do for himself, not just to do for him in a codependent way.
Gotcha.
Where, again, that's a complete, see, my dad made up for no time spending with my brother and I and my mother by giving, hey, I'm gonna buy you a dirt bike, a motorcycle.
Mhm.
That was his way of, here you go, making
Buying
up for
affection.
buying. Yeah, so buying you things. But there was no connection, there was no engagement, there was no time spent talking. There was never, I don't think I've ever
Yeah.
spent more than 3 minutes talking to my dad. But yet, in hindsight, my father ended up giving me the greatest gift to make up for all those years that I was seeking this validation from him. And that's when my dad died at the age of 56 from lung cancer. And in the last 3 years of my life, this is an interesting story. I had developed a tumor around my spine between the ages of 24 and 27. And I attributed it to bodybuilding because I was lifting heavy weights. I was a power lifter. I competed in bodybuilding and I thought like maybe it was just all the impact I was putting on my body as a
Mhm.
bodybuilder. And this aggressive tumor kept growing. It was not cancerous, but it kept growing around my spine. And every time it got taken out, it would grow back to full size in 6 weeks. I mean, that's how aggressive it was.
Wow.
And I spent the last time I was living in Chicago. I went to Northwestern. They couldn't handle it. Mount Sinai in New York couldn't do it. I ended up spending on and off 6 months at Sloan Kettering and became a textbook case while I was there trying to figure out how they were going to get rid of this thing. Now, it was during that time my dad finally made like his attempt to make up for all that time. He actually would, and he was going through a difficult time at work with his business at that time, but he made the effort to come down and be with me. And I never asked him to, because at that point I had been used to it. I didn't,
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
I didn't think it twice about it. But I was still struggling in my addictions at that point. Even though I was off and on with drugs and alcohol, I had a terrible sex addiction. It was probably the worst I can ever imagine. But my father made that attempt to be down there. And he was down there quite a bit. And, he couldn't really talk and engage you, but just him being there told you that he was trying to
Yeah.
make up.
It's his way.
Now, yeah. And then when I recovered from this issue, it was the following year that my dad developed cancer. Now, you would have thought that, hey, you could go to the best hospital in the world, and that's Sloan Kettering for cancer. It's the number one hospital in the world. And yet my dad chose not to do that. And I think my dad I don't think wanted to go on. He had lung
Mhm.
cancer. It was stage 3B. It went to stage 4. And I think at that point, I think his demons and his limited beliefs growing up as a child caught up to him, and he didn't know what to do with it. And sorry about the light keeps going on and off. But with that being said, it was like on his deathbed, I remember him kind of leaning over, looking at me. He couldn't really see me. He was already kind of dying already. His eyes were open, but he was not there. And it was like he was brain dead at that point. He was dying, but it was like he was talking to me and saying that if I could do it all over again, I would have never sacrificed my, building a
True.
career instead of being with you kids and doing and having a normal family life that you didn't get, and all the things that I neglected, and I did to you and your brother. And it was like I felt that, but like in a way, it was like he was saying it was not my intention.
He
I
probably didn't
did that.
realize it.
He
He didn't
didn't know.
realize.
See, yeah,
He might have had his own daddy issues. I mean, unless we show our kids how to be the example, they don't know. They only know what we teach them or what they see growing up. So that's all they have to go on. So sometimes
yeah,
it's really good to break that cycle and break that chain like you have with your son. By him not being there, it's made you an even better, stronger father. Like you said, you're the founder, co-founder of Empowerment
Empowered Fathers in Action.
Yeah, that one. I just went blank. I'm sorry.
That's all right. But no,
Okay.
it was definitely again, you can't give what you don't have. And my
Right.
father didn't know how to be the father that I wanted to be. Now, granted, my brother, took it even worse than I did. My brother became, it was even worse than me. He became a heroin addict. And to this day, my brother is mentally ill, as a result of extensive drug use from heroin. He lives with my mother. My mother has to take care of him, and he's a 51-year-old man. I'm 53. And, but with that being said, I was able to rise above it, and that was the
Yeah.
pivot point for me. So my dad had given me the greatest gift to say that finally this validation that I've been seeking from him and then from other
All right.
people that went unfulfilled, because I lived in a world of expectation. I
Yeah.
lived in a world of codependency, that my happiness, my success, my joy, the things I wanted in life depended upon you, the
Yeah.
world, and everyone that I decided to put
I've
in
been
it.
there. Yep.
And that was the pivot point that I said that no one is going to change my life. Expectations lead to unfulfillment, that I was going to have to find a way to be responsible. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know. I just knew that somehow I had to do it different if I was going to change my life. Because if I continued the way I was going to end up just like my father, dying at young. And I had already had 2 near-death experiences in my 20s from alcohol poisoning. So
Wow.
it was just a matter of time that, I could have been dying from something. And so I didn't know what I was going to do. The only thing is that pivot point, took me in a direction of Eastern philosophy, meditation,
Mhm.
yoga, and all of those things that to this day that I do. And I was able to find a process that worked for me, and thus that I follow to this day. I do it every day, and I'll be happy to talk about that later whenever you
Yeah,
ask me to
I
do
do.
that.
I'm gonna put that down because I do want to come back to that. But first, I just want to go back just for a minute because there are a lot of people watching right now, and I know several of them that have many challenges in their own lives as well as I do with some of these issues. But so you've gone through, you said drug use, alcohol use, anger, a horrible sex addiction that you and I've spoken about. At any point in time, did you seek counseling? Did your mom try to get you? Did she see the anger trend, try to get you anger
Yeah,
management? Did
I
that
I did
take
go
place?
to I did go to therapist. I did in my 20s, but I was always smarter than them. Like that's what I that would and I was arrogant, and I just it didn't stay. I didn't stay. I would go in a few times, and this isn't working. I'm out of here. And the thing is, I wasn't smarter than them. That's just how my thought
You want to
process
deal with
was.
it. You didn't want to deal
I
with
didn't
it.
want to look at it, and my sexual addiction was horrible. I mean, I would plan trips around my addiction, to meet women in other cities that I was doing business with. Even though I was engaged at the time to my fiance in Chicago, I was having multiple, not that I loved other women. It was just
It's just
purely,
a physical thing.
it was a
I've heard
physical
guys.
escape. It was
I've
like,
heard guys say that.
it's like heroin. It was like shooting heroin for me.
My ex-husband cheated on me, and he told me, he says, "Well, I love you. I don't love them." Well, what that to a woman that means nothing, Chris. I mean,
Yeah, I
I
know.
hear what you're saying. It was just a physical, it's just a sexual thing. But with, women and men, their sense of that emotional attachment and that loyalty are on two different levels. So
But
a
here's the
woman,
difference, Misty, is that when I would engage in these sexual acts with women, and this even involved in, with prostitutes, this was also in sex clubs, I felt
sex
like,
clubs.
yes, yes,
Wow.
yeah. But
Okay.
San Francisco, New York City, yes. So we're
Wow.
talking, yeah. And as a result of that, I would feel like at an all-time low. I would never consider myself I'd ever felt suicidal, but there were moments that I felt so low that if something were to happen, I would say, I don't care. I felt like just like a piece of crap after all of it was like you would get the high, and as the high, and as you did the act and you came down, that was it.
That's
It
where the
was
guilt sets in.
I hit a
Shame.
low, and then I would say I'm never doing this again, and only to 2 days later be right back at the doorstep doing the same thing, nothing different.
Yeah, that's insane how we that shame and that guilt, we just beat ourselves up over all of that. It was so horrible. Just
Yeah,
I remember every bit of that. Every time I'd go out and get high, I'd come home and I didn't want to get sober because when I got sober, I had to face all the things that I had done wrong and all the people that I'd hurt that I loved, you know? And to me, that was the hardest part. And oftentimes that sent me right back out the door to get high again because I
yeah,
wasn't mentally ready to deal with their anger or their pain, you know?
exactly.
So, Chris, let's talk about how were you able to stop this? Like, how were you able? So, the show's going to take a little different turn because you've already kind of shared with us your pivotal moment, your darkest place here. So let's just go ahead and turn it and start talking about how you were able to break that and get it, and what it took for you to realize you had to make a change, and then what the steps you did to do it.
Well, it was hitting rock bottom. I mean, I had thought I've hit rock bottom several times, but I didn't. I mean, you would figure a two near death experiences would be a rock bottom, or
Yeah.
say, hey, I can't do this anymore. But that wasn't the case. It
Hmm.
was it was my father dying, and just realizing that I had that here's the weird part about this, is that while I was sad that my dad was done, it was like I've never felt peace like I've ever, like, and even to this day, I've never had this level of peace when my dad was in that moment we had together when he was passing. And it wasn't peaceful because I wanted him to die. That's not what I'm going with that.
Right.
It was like this peace, like everything was going to be okay. Like it was like his spirit was speaking to me, even though he was technically still alive. He was probably already leaving his body at that point. That's this energy that I felt, like this peace and love that I've never felt, and even to this day, even with the birth of my son and getting married to my wife, it was just this. I can't describe this feeling, and this was what was the pivot point for me. Like I didn't know what I was going to do. I just said that I got to do something,
You got to
and I'm
change something.
and I dove into this unknown of not knowing what I was going to do. I mean, I had ADHD on top of this. I said, how am I going to meditate? When I started doing yoga and I started meditate, I said, how am I going to meditate and sit here? I can't sit still for more than 10 seconds. But however, I never had discipline up to that point. But for some reason, I did it. Like I just forced myself, white knuckled it for several months, and meditated, journaled, did things that were foreign to me, did things that my ADHD said that you can't. How can I don't want you doing this. You got to be all over the place, and yet I just did it. I never had this discipline before, and for some reason, as I kept doing it and doing it and doing it, there was something driving me, and even to this day, I still can't explain it, but I think it had something to do in that moment with my father. There was some kind of divine spirit
Hmm.
that just it interjected itself in me, that it was kind of like it gave me wings.
Right.
It was their wings that helped guiding me. And but I did the work. It wasn't like I was dependent upon someone. No, I did the work. But it was amazing looking back that that time what I did, that was something that would have been, if somebody that knew me before would have said, I could never see you doing that.
Right.
And so the people that know me today, or in the last 20 plus years, they're like, well, I can see you doing that because that's you. Well, that wasn't always me. I was completely the opposite of what I do today. I mean, in
Right.
many ways, and how I live my life. And and I lived spontaneous. I didn't take care of myself. Even though I was bodybuilding, I was still not really putting good things into my body. And it was, again, it was overcoming my confidence issues, and my how I looked at myself. I didn't see myself in a way that a lot of people thought I did.
Well, you said you did the work, Chris. Did you do like AA, or did you go through the 12-step program? Did you do
Yeah.
any inpatient or outpatient or anger management classes? I mean, what is the work you did?
I did. I started doing some anger management, classes. I did the 12-step program, and then I immersed myself in yoga and Eastern meditation. It was the Eastern meditation and yoga that was pivotal for me. I mean, really. And then the 12-step as well is, so what I ended up doing is I incorporated a lot of the principles from both areas and came up with a process. Now, again, this all kind of just happened. It wasn't like I designed this. This just all sort of just came together like a perfect storm.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what I use today, not only for myself, what I teach a lot of my clients in terms of overcoming limited beliefs and mindset development, and what got me out of the problem to resolve the root cause of the problem, and then create a solution, create a new foundation of healthier habits and disciplines that I've built my life and my career on compared to what I used to do before. That I actually live my life with work-life harmony. Again, you notice I didn't say balance, because there's no such thing as balance. Think of a seesaw. It's never going to be on its axis point like this. It's going to teeter. So there's always going to be a give or take. There's never going to be perfection. And I had to change my whole way of thinking. I had to change, everything. This took a good 2-3 years of this self-evolvement. I went on yoga retreats. I didn't become like a yogi by any means, but I really immersed myself in deep meditation, and I really did a lot of work on myself over those 2-3 years. And then, like I said, today I use all the methodology and process that I've now used with a lot of my clients. And Misty, a lot of the people today that are in our circles, a lot of these people, I help them do the same, for themselves. They did it, but I used the methodology that I helped them to get out of their own way and create a better life and a business or career for themselves.
Right. I want to just show this real quick, Chris, because I think it's kind of relevant to what we're talking about. You do these posts often,
Yes.
constantly, and I love them. It really motivates my day. But this one says, be the person who breaks the cycle. If you were judged, choose understanding. If you were rejected, choose acceptance. If you were shamed, choose compassion. Be the person you needed when you were hurting, not the person who hurt you. Vow to be better than what broke you, to heal instead of becoming bitter so you can act from your heart, not your pain. And that just brings tears to my eyes, because that's exactly what you just described to all of us, earlier, as the things that you said you didn't get as a child that you now make
Yeah.
damn sure you give as a dad. So I just
Yes.
wanted to share that so people can, those are
Thank you.
kind of things that come from Chris. You guys, if you want to follow him on Facebook, every single morning, like around 4 something, he's going to be posting something that you're going to need to hear. And it really does help get me through my day. We have a question from Billy McElroy, who's a friend of mine. I just adore Billy. He's with our Awaken Atlanta tribe. Billy wanted to know, what was your biggest adversity that you've overcome?
Biggest adversity that I overcome was, again, learning to really find who I really was. I was living what I was led to believe I should be, because my father said that, if you're going to be successful in life, you have to work in a certain profession. You have to be around certain people. And I began to adopt values that I thought I should be, using to, get, to, become successful in my life. And they
Mm-hmm.
were completely opposite of what I really was. And then you wonder why you struggled. You wonder why you live in fear and worry and overwhelm, because I was living in the past and the future simultaneously, subconsciously, not even realizing it, from those limited beliefs. And then I would recreate through different situations, more, the triggering events that would trigger that fear to keep me in that place of overwhelmness, fear. And again, it was, again, because I was trying to pretend to be somebody I wasn't. And when I began to take the mask off, the ironclad mask, and put it down, and as Misty does with her movement, transparency, that is the number one value that represents who I am. I'm
Yeah.
transparent. When I speak at corporations, just like I'm speaking to you here, or if I'm coaching my clients, I'm transparent. I will tell you when I make mistakes. I'm
Yeah.
not, it's like a president. You hear all the great things that the president does. I'm not saying, we're not getting into politics here, but
Right.
just think of any president. They're human beings. They make mistakes. They're
Right.
going to screw up. I'm not holding back anything. I'll tell you if I screwed up. But I can never do that before, because all I could do is I was perfect. I could do
Yeah.
no wrong. It's your fault why I'm not happy. It's your fault because I'm not feeling good. It's your fault because I didn't make the sale. It's your fault.
Right.
No, I began to
That
shift my
blame
way
game.
of thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to share this real quick too, Chris, because if someone's thinking about maybe coaching with you, I highly recommend it. He did a lot with me. I was just starting out in this whole journey. He really helped me sculpt and get an idea of where I wanted to go and how I wanted to brand everything. So I really appreciate you for that, Chris. But here's another one of your little motivational things that you do. 10 ways to accelerate your personal growth and control your emotions, be proactive, maintain a diary, list your creative ideas, always try to give 100% effort, be a better listener, and meet new people. That's important to a lot of us. I'm a big talker. I have to learn to listen. Be curious, ask questions all the time. Don't only learn from success stories, learn from the failures as well. Spend less time on the internet. Don't be materialistic. Don't follow the crowd. Follow your own way. Do what you love and make a daily routine and strictly follow it. And I have to say, I know you apply this 100% because I will never forget when I was coaching with you, talking about going to an event, doing this, doing that. And you said, Misty, stop following the crowd and start making your own. You said, you start having people follow you. You stop following other people. So I totally know that is that last one there, that number 9, don't follow the crowd, follow your own way, do what you love, is something that you believe in and practice yourself. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Okay, so let's talk about your daily process because I do want the viewers to know what they can do. You mentioned earlier, and we said we'd come back to it. What is the daily process?
Well, meditation and journaling is what over time got me out of my problem, resolved the root cause to my limited beliefs. Again, that was the need for validation that I never got from my father. I had to forgive my father from every ounce of my cell of my being. Just everything in my body, in my head, my subconscious, unconscious, and conscious mindset. I had to release that. I had to forgive myself. So, and when I built my success foundation, this is what I've been doing now for almost 23 years. And I've been doing it every day for 7 days, have not missed a day. And I know that probably people are like, oh my God, that's dedication. But again, this is not something I did my whole life. This is something I had to work towards. But I wake up every morning early, like 4:15, 4:30 in the morning. First thing I do is I make my bed. And what people ask, why do you make your bed? Well, it's just, again, it's something, relatively easy to accomplish, but it gets my mind focused. It's something that, I'm doing something good. Doesn't mean you have to make your bed. Then I meditate for 20 minutes. I journal. I write down whatever comes to mind. I don't have no intention. I just write whatever comes. That's my subconscious mind talking to my conscious mindset. Now, I've been doing meditation for many years, so I know I can. My subconscious mind talks to in the beginning, I didn't connect with my subconscious because I was just learning how to meditate. I had to get into that rhythm of doing that. And as a result of that, I would journal, and it would reveal the things that were getting in my way. It helped me to get to the root cause of what that was, that need for validation. And I didn't know what that was when my dad was dying. I just knew that I was struggling. I was worried all the time. I lived in anxiety. I lived in fear. And I was always in fight or flight mode. I said, how do I get out of this? I didn't know what was causing this. But nonetheless, the meditation and journaling, then I would work out. Now, I don't work out 7 days a week, but
how long, hang on one second. How long do you journal? Like how many minutes do we recommend?
Journal whatever comes out of off your hand onto the paper. It could be 10 seconds. It may not be anything. And you might be writing 5 paragraphs. It changes every day. There's no set time. No set time. Meditation, I would say start with 10 minutes, work your way up to 20, 30 minutes if you got that time to do that. And then I work out. I do a resistance training. I do some cardio, but more resistance training. That's again, working all the muscles in my body. I come back, I shower, I eat a healthy breakfast. I then read a chapter or two out of a book that is relevant to personal growth, professional development, or anything that I'm working on in my business or with clients. And then I review my daily goals for the week or for the day, excuse me. And they're very specific with the priorities that matter. And then I immerse myself. I'm laser focused on the priorities that matter. See, I was consumed by procrastination up
Mhm.
until 23 years ago. I was busy, but I wasn't productive. See, busy and not productive is a form of procrastination. It was an excuse I created. Oh, I'm busy. I'm working long hours, but I really wasn't addressing the things that really mattered.
Gotcha.
So by being focused and late and really being clear, having that clarity through meditation, being present, being decisive and taking action allows you to be laser focused. And then that's what I do every day. So it's like with anything, a diet doesn't yield long-term results. You might lose some weight, but you don't change those habits. That's discipline does that over a period of time. So you end up putting the weight back on. If you're going to change something in your life, it's got to become part of a lifestyle to do every day for the rest of your life. I call it
It as you were spilling it out. It's in the comments. I'm sure you can probably see it on the screen there, but I've got the
yes.
whole thing listed for everybody. Thank you, Jana. Jana says it's a great show. Thank you, Jana, for being here. Um, it's been a really great show. It really is. Thank you, Chris. Let's talk. Thank you for sharing all that with us. And we understand that repetition is how we let it become habit, because I know if
Yes.
you stick to something long enough, it's so easy to go back to your old ways. So it's about just fighting through it and being stronger and just doing it. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's talk now some more about your radio show. Talk about how people can get in touch with you, what you can offer them as coaching, what you focus on, things like that.
Sure. Well, the name of the radio show is called Sustainable Success. We look at both life and business as one. So we have experts on. We've had Mistie on in the past. You should check out her show. She was on about a year and a half or so ago.
Long time ago.
And again, we look at life and business as a whole. We look at how we can help scale your business. We help how to achieve work-life harmony, how to improve your overall well-being. We look at personal development, professional development. So we've had a number of great guests over the years. We've
Yeah.
had Jason McCann, the CEO of Veridesk on. We've had Bob Berg, the Go Giver. We have Mark Victor Hansen coming up on in January from Chicken Soup for the Soul. So we've had a lot of great people on. And in terms of where you can find me is you can find me on my website at ChristopherSalem.com. Also my nonprofit EFAmovement.org. That's Empowered Fathers in Action. But simply reach out to me on my email. I'd love to get to know you. Chris at ChristopherSalem.com. And some of the things I could do to help people here is, again, I've been there. I've struggled. I've lived in fear. I've struggled with addiction. I've hit rock bottom. And I'm all about mindset. I wrote an international best-selling book in the area called Master Your Inner Critic, Resolve the Root Cause, Create Prosperity. I've worked with Jack Canfield, where I contributed to his Mastering the Art of Success in that particular area. So I know how to overcome limited beliefs. I know how to create better patterns for success, whatever that means to you in your life. And those are the things I can help Misty for your listeners if they need some guidance. And there's never an obligation. I just like to get to know people, and it's up to them to decide what's best for them. I'm just here to share information and inspire through empathy and kindness, being the example and allowing people to take what that is and do what's best for them.
What is that saying you always say? I've gone blank just now, but I played in my head all the time about um
I'll say it for you. It's
okay.
called give. This is how I live my
Yeah.
life. And if you write this down, it's give without expectations, receive without resistance. And receive, meaning that when you receive without resistance, meaning that you may give to someone, but it comes back from somewhere else. It's not that you expect that to come back from the person you gave. That's where people get frustrated. Oh, I did all this stuff for this person, and they say, again, if you get into the please and enabling mode of that then you're going to be in expectation mode. But if you give from empathy and kindness, empowering them to do for themselves. Now, I'm not saying if you have a 90-year-old woman who can't get out of her chair, you're going to say, come on, grandma, you can do it. No, you're going to help her, of course. But if somebody can do something for themselves, you can be the example for them to do it. You can refer them to resources that will help them to do it for themselves, not actually doing it for them. That's not helping them grow. So that's the thing that again, that what that statement stands for, and it will change the quality of your life and the people around you that you around for, with that energy, when you can really operate from that statement.
I think about that often. It rings through my head a lot, actually, because